Welcome everyone to this session of Infotouch University Online, where we go in depth into our two point-of-sale product lines, Storekeeper POS and Store Manager. Today's topic is age verification, multiple units of measure, and case discounts. All of these features are critical to the liquor store market and the smoke shop market, and many of them are useful in other areas as well, like convenience stores, for example. So we're going to go over these as a group so that any of you wanting to go after these markets will be in good position to understand what we can do for you. There is no difference between our two product lines with regards to these these features that we're going to go over today. So we'll just go ahead and talk about our POS products going forward. All right, we'll start with age verification, and first of all, let's check out the basics on how you do this. We're in the liquor store demo of the Storekeeper demo palette. And the first and most important thing for age verification is to tell us by department what items require a minimum age. So if we go into setup departments, you'll notice here that it is set for a minimum age of 21 years old to buy beer, to buy liquor, and all the other alcohol products. You'll notice when we get to tobacco that the minimum age is reduced to 18. And of course, laws change over time, so none of these things are required. You have to put it in for your customer, and if these items are checked, when something is sold in the register in these departments, we're going to do something about getting their birth date, and we'll talk about what the various somethings are in just a minute. But if you have a store that is comfortable with selling alcohol or tobacco items without putting in a birth date or scanning a driver's license, we're okay with that. You just have to tell us, and the default, in fact, is you have to tell us you want to check for the age. And if we look at some other departments, I don't have to be of any age to buy a candy bar. So you tell us what you want, you turn on those features, and then the register will go ahead and act in accordance with another setup option in Miscellaneous 7. The default is going to be none. So on this Use Driver's License reader, most people don't have any device that can actually read a driver's license. If it's set to none and you sell a product in one of these departments with a minimum age requirement, then we will just manually ask you on the register, please put in their birth date. And for the rest of that sale, once the birth date is entered, we will use that birth date to determine whether the customer is eligible to buy the product. So if an 18-year-old goes up and buys a pack of Marlboros, we'll be fine with that. But once that's entered, if they try to buy some beer, we won't let them do it. Of course, they can always go to the next transaction and put in a fake birth date, and that's where our two driver's license reader options come in. So the first is been there for a while, and quite frankly is not very popular. It is a reader, a separate reader from any of the other POS devices from a company called Tricom. The device name is IDE, and it could read the driver's license, last I checked, of 49 of the 50 states. The exception being my state of Georgia, which made testing with it rather interesting. But in any event, what has happened since we've added this interface several years ago is that it's very clear it is way too expensive to be of use to most customers. We have some of them out there. It does work. You can certainly go ahead and use it, but it's very pricey and just has not been popular. So we have been looking for a little while, and based on the feedback from some of our good resellers, we took a look at another option which we've just introduced last month or the month before, very recently. And we think this is going to be the way to go going forward. So Honeywell, Metrologic, for those of us who have been in the industry for a while, makes probably the most popular barcode scanners for our dealers on the market. Now the bottom basic barcode scanner works just great for ringing up items, will not support what's called the Easy DL, DL for driver's license option. but they have somewhat more upscale scanners, way cheaper than the Tricom readers that you can use, and it will scan currently the driver's license of 48 of the 50 states. The 2 states it does not currently do are California and New Mexico. All other states have a 2D barcode on their driver's license, including Georgia, and you can go ahead and scan that with the same scanner that you use to ring up beer, wine, or anything else. So you don't have to have an extra device. You pay a little bit more for the scanner, and it's a very effective option. As we'll see in just a minute, in addition to picking up the birth date off the driver's license, which is the only thing the Tricom device does, the Honeywell scanners will actually also give us lots of other information, name, address, and such, and you can use the driver's license to fill in the customer information, and we'll show that in just a minute as well. So that means that this option is really not just targeted towards liquor stores and smoke shops. If I'm in a clothing store, I'm probably more proactive about trying to capture customer information, especially a high-end clothing store or jewelry store or what have you. And entering that information is really kind of tedious. So to have the driver's license fill it in for you automatically and correctly is a really nice feature. So we're currently set to using the Honeywell EasyDL interface. Do bear in mind that this is an add-on option. It does not come with the software. So take a look at your price order forms to figure out what the price is. It is currently $99 per store for storekeeper, and I think it's $199 per store for store manager. Okay, so this is how you set up age verification within the system. The next step is to go to, you can find it here, the register module. All right, so I'm going to buy a bag of ice. No need for a driver's license. Now I'll go ahead and buy some liquor. And we'll pick out some brandy. And it is now asking for our driver's license because the liquor store department was set up for age verification. Actually, let me go back to setup for just a quick second. I forgot to mention that there is a security level to manually enter a driver's license birth date. And in fact, I believe if we go back into this, it is set for assistant manager. So let's say you're in Arizona and somebody from New Mexico comes along and you can't read their driver's license. You'd still like to sell them some alcohol, but you may not want to leave it wide open for everybody because you're going to have people who are going to want to sell it to their 20-year-old best friends and try and get around it. So you can set a security level if we can't read the driver's license. And that is anything from none, record only, the 8 different password levels, and if you're really sensitive about it, let's say if you're in some area where the police crack down extremely hard, and we've seen people get $25,000 fines for selling alcohol to a minor, you can just set it to never allow. And that means there's absolutely no way that anybody can sell items in minimum age departments without getting a driver's license scan. Okay, but as I said, this is currently set to assistant manager. So if I hit manual entry, I get prompted for a password. That's a bad password. Okay, let's say I'm trying to fool the system. Well, when we hit cancel, the software said, okay, you can't give me the correct password. I'm not going to let you go ahead and enter in the birth date. Let's try it again. Password here happens to be blank. And this, by the way, is what it normally looks like if you have this option set to none. So, and that's the default, by the way. So most folks don't have any of these devices, and then we'll go straight to the screen where we simply ask you to put in a birth date. There's no way around this, by the way. If you are comfortable, if you're looking at some senior citizen who's a little obviously over 21, but they don't have their driver's license, just put in a date that makes them 21 years or older, and we're in good shape. You'll notice once we do that, birth date entered, and that will stay for the rest of the transaction until either you finish it out, close it out with the tender types, or do a clear sale. As I mentioned earlier, if we put in an 18-year-old birth date, we would not be able to buy beer set for 21 until the next transaction. All right, let's buy some wine. I'll get a bottle of Pinot Noir. And again, we get this prompt. And now let me show you what this looks like. I do have one of these Honeywell scanners hooked up right now. And that's it. I just scanned my driver's license and the birth date was entered. But instead of having to trust somebody, it's actually coming directly from the driver's license. So that's how age verification works with the Honeywell scanner. As I mentioned earlier, if you don't have it set to use one of the devices, then it simply goes directly to the manual entry of the birth date. And that works for most folks. All right. One other thing that is useful, it's not really age verification, but as long as we're talking about the Honeywell EasyDL add-on module, clear out this sale, go into customer account. I'm going to create a new customer. And if you have this EasyDL option, you'll get a button on the right-hand side here for scanning the license. So let me go ahead and touch that. And you get a box up here. And if you can't scan the license, just hit the cancel button. But if you can, there you go. That's no data entry. It's got my name, my address, city, state, zip, license number, all right into the system. I hit OK. I'm done. So a much more powerful option for entering customer information without manually typing stuff in. And one has to assume that, generally speaking, the information on the driver's license will be valid. Okay, that covers age verification. We're going to go on now to our next topic, which is multiple units of measure. So if I am in this market and I'm going to sell some beer, let's actually cancel out of this for a second. I'll start from scratch again. I'm going to sell some beer, and I'm going to sell a case of Bud, or some sort of Bud. So here's Bud in 12-ounce bottles in a case with 24 bottles, 4 six-packs. Very, very common in this business to not just sell cases. I'm going to sell cases, yes. I'm going to break those cases apart and sell 6-packs and singles and maybe 12-packs, and multiple units of measure, which is a feature in our inventory record and used in the register module, allows you to track those sales to a specific SKU or item. And we will track that regardless of how it's sold. So when you get low on your product and you need to reorder, we don't care if you sold 4 6-packs or 1 case. We're going to track the quantity on hand exactly regardless. So you'll note, by the way, once you select something from a lookup screen, of course, you're probably going to be scanning this most of the time anyway, but if you select something from the lookup screen and it has multiple units, you'll get a little box here that shows you the quantity on hand and all the units of measure for this product, which, as you can see, happens to be case, 6-pack, single, and 12-packs. So if I want to sell 21 cases, I can do that, or I could sell 504 bottles if I choose, or any combination thereof. We'll add that to the screen. Scan my driver's license again, and note that at this point in time, those 4 different units come up. The 6-pack happens to be highlighted in green. I can select OK to sell a 6-pack, or I can touch any of these buttons to sell that unit of measure. Let's see where that came from. Excuse me. Here in the inventory module, let's take a look at beer. It's a domestic Bud. And it is the second choice, which happens to only come in the 4x6 case right now. So you set up multiple units of measure in the Special Features tab. If this is not already checked, you would check it and then it would go straight into this screen. And in a second, we'll go ahead and add multiple units to an existing item so you get the flow of how this works from scratch. So every item, whether it's got multiple units or not, has a stocking unit. If you don't have multiple units, you get to enter it directly into the inventory record in this screen. But when you have multiple units, you first tell us the names of the units that you sell. So we sell cases, 6-packs, singles, and 12-packs. By the way, you don't have a whole lot of characters here for the names, so keep it short and simple. It's like 6 or 7 characters maximum, so abbreviations can be helpful. One of these units, in this case it happens to be the 6-pack, must be designated as the default selling unit. And if you forget to do that, the software will just insist that you do it. That's why the 6-pack here is highlighted. Okay. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a conversion factor, retail price, and any additional price levels you have entered. So for the case, the stocking unit, in this case, those fields are grayed out. You can't enter them because when you sell a case, it will by default subtract 1 from the quantity on hand. The retail price is coming from the price quantities tab, and the frequent buyer, whatever discount, price levels you have will come from the discount price levels tab. But for all other selling units, we need to know, so here's 6-pack, how many of them are in a case? Well, there are 4. So what does that do for us? When we sell a 6-pack, we're going to divide 1 by the conversion factor, in other words, a quarter, and subtract that from the quantity on hand. We do have 4 decimal digits of precision when we track quantities on hand, so we can be extremely accurate about this. You also need to tell us the retail price and the price levels for each of the units you add. There's 24 singles in this particular case, and we're going to sell them at $1 each, 2 12-packs. And in this case, you're noticing that the price levels are set to the same as retail price. That's just because I was lazy. But you can go ahead and put it any price you want for each of the price levels and retail price for each of the units of measure. Okay. Let's also take a look at a related feature that you can optionally use. Most beers and wines and what have you, where you use multiple units, do not have a different barcode on, let's say, the case versus the 6-pack versus the single. So notice either the UPC or item number here. Like, let's go ahead and I'm going to copy the UPC to the clipboard by highlighting it and hitting copy, right-click and hitting copy. And I can just go ahead and paste that in right here. So this is exactly the same as what we did the last time. Instead of finding the item by description, we found it by the UPC, which does not give us any indication of what unit of measure to use, and that's usually the way you want it to work. By the way, let's sell a case here, and you'll notice that the price is using the case price versus a 6-pack. But some places where you use multiple units of measure do have different barcodes. For example, Coca-Cola's and high-end consumer packaged goods from the major manufacturers where I am getting a case of Cokes from the store, from my vendor. And when I break that apart and sell 6-packs and singles, or whatever the units happen to be, they have different barcodes on them. So when I sell a single and I scan that barcode, it would be nice not to be prompted for whether I'm selling a case or what have you. And we can support that with the alternate keys feature. So when you have an item with multiple units and you go to add an alternate key, in addition to putting in whatever key you want, and alternate keys, by the way, are up to 24 characters alphanumeric, so pretty good for most anything you're going to want to find. You'll also see the unit of measure option. You won't see it for anything that doesn't have multiple units, and the default will be none, meaning that we'll go ahead and prompt you for all the options. But you can have something in there that is directly tied to, let's say, a single. And in fact, I've got one in there, so I'm not going to save this. You'll notice that this first alternate key here happens to be tied to the single unit of measure. And I'm going to copy that guy and paste it in here. And watch what happens when I sell this one. If I scan this barcode, and I'm pasting it in, but of course you normally do this with a barcode scanner. And it sold you the case without, the single, without asking you for what unit of measure you wanted to use. So that's a very useful option for those items where the manufacturer has separate barcodes. I did say I wanted to show you how this worked from scratch. So let me do that right now. I'm going to go to a record that does not have multiple units, and here's one. Notice, by the way, that if you don't check multiple units, you still can have a stock unit name, which can print on receipts and on purchase orders, and it's right there in the record. So we don't have any complex multiple units of entry thing. I can just go ahead and enter it right here. But I said I wanted to show you, even though in this particular case it's not really very relevant, but here's what it looks like from scratch when you check multiple units. You have to give us the name of the stock unit to begin with, and then there's not much point to doing this unless you're going to have at least one extra unit. We support up to 6 additional units besides the stocking unit. And again, the stocking unit is the unit that the quantities on hand and on order are tracked in. So 6-pack, can't type today, and we'll add a new unit called single, and let's say that's it for now. When you're finished adding your units of measure, you'll hit finish, and as I said earlier, if you don't put in a default selling unit, the software will force you to. Each of these has an option by there for the default selling unit, and if I wanted to make this single a default unit, I just click on one of those. Doesn't matter, but you do have to select one. And that's the one that's going to show up in the green if we don't have any barcode linked to the specific unit of measure. All right, after that, we do have to put in the conversion factor. It's got to be greater. I was going to say got to be greater than 1. I don't think it has to actually, but that's the way it's typically used. And you do have to put in some sort of price for the retail and your price levels. Now, I only put in singles at this point, and it is noting that I haven't put in the prices for the 6-pack and the conversion factor, so we'll go ahead and put those in. So that's how you enter multiple units. I'm going to not save this. And by the way, if I go into alternate keys on an item without multiple units, you notice there is no option, quite reasonably, for selecting the unit of measure when you scan that alternate key. All right, let's go back to this sale here. And just to kind of keep the numbers easy, I'm going to void a couple of the line items here. And we're going to wind up with a 6-pack. We're going to sell it. We'll pay with it for cash, exact change. Let's go back to that inventory item. And notice instead of 21, which you may recall was the cases on hand before, now that we've sold a 6-pack out of it, the system said, well, the conversion factor is 4. So when I sell one, I'm selling a quarter of a case. And here is our current quantity on hand, 20.75. You'll notice the 4 decimal digits of precision on that, so we can track it very accurately. Reporting on multiple units is also built in, and you'll find it under our Special Features tab, just like you did in the inventory record when you're entering it. There's 2 reports related to units of measure. Here's the first one, and what this is going to do is for any item with units of measure, the Options tab is not terribly unusual here. We'll go ahead and send it to the screen. Give it a second, and we'll show you every item with multiple units, the name of the unit stocked, the quantity on hand in that unit of measure, and then the number of additional units. And for each of the additional units, we'll tell you what it's called, what the conversion rate is, the quantity on hand in that unit. So for example, if I have 4 30-packs, I have 120 singles. And we'll show you the retail price and for each of those. So that's the units of measure report, just a way to get onto hard copy or on the screen information about your items that have multiple units. The other report that we have, and let's go down a little bit here and select it from the menu, is the unit of measure or UM sales report. Now when we sell something in the register module, we will typically report on it in various places, including the Transaction Manager module, electronic journal. That will not show you the unit of measure. In fact, this report happens to be the only one that will show it to you. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the options here. I'm going to report on a date range, which is going to default to year to date. Let's just take a look at today's sales. And for each of your items with multiple units, we'll show you the quantity sold and the dollar amount over that date range. Let me go ahead and do that again and go back to our beer department so we can more quickly see the item that we're looking for here, which we just sold. And that was that Budweiser. Happens to be the second one. And we'll go ahead and select it. And here you can see that we sold 1 6-pack for $4.99. If you look at the electronic journal, you're going to get basically the same information. It's going to tell you you sold a quarter of a case, though, rather than you sold a 6-pack. So this is a handy report to have for those who are looking to analyze sales based on the unit of measure. All right, our third topic today is case discounts. And that's a very important feature in the liquor store market. Let's go ahead and see how that is done. So, case discounts is a term used by people in the industry. In Infotouch speak, where this feature is not specifically restricted to liquor stores, we use the name threshold discounts. So if I go into any particular record, I'll go into a candy item to begin with. I don't really care what it is. You'll notice that the quantity price breaks field in the discount price levels tab is set to none. But there are some additional options. And let me show you a different item where this is already set up. It's a wine. It's domestic. It's a brand called Behringer. And here we have some type of wine in a 1.5 liter bottle. Threshold discount is now set to, or the quantity price breaks is set to threshold retail. So threshold retail and threshold all are basically the same. The only difference between them is whether this discount will apply to anybody getting at a price level or only those at retail. So if you're already giving a discount to your frequent buyer customers, you may not want to give them an additional break. Set at the threshold retail, and the discount will only be applied to retail. Set at the threshold all, and we won't care what the price level is. Now this is used in a lot of different ways. For example, a buy two, get one free would look like this. Buy two, I'm going to uncheck retroactive, get one free. So after 2 all the way up to quantity 3, I get a 10% discount. But the case type discounting, you reach a certain number of bottles of wine and you get a discount, and it applies back to all of them from the beginning. And it's very common in the liquor store business. It's typically 12 bottles of wine, any bottles of wine, we don't care, happen to get you a discount. In this case, though, to make it quicker, I'm going to go ahead and set that quantity level to 6. The retroactive, you notice the maximum quantity disappears. We don't care. Once you get to quantity 6, every item of these Behringer found, whatever they are, will go ahead and get a 10% discount. Couple of things to note here. One, the threshold multiplier. This is a 1.5 liter bottle. That's a big bottle. Most bottles of wine are 750 milliliters. So typically with these case discounts, I might buy 6 750 milliliters of wine and get my discount. Or I might buy 3 1.5 liters, they're twice as big, and get the discount, or any combination thereof. And the way you handle it is you set the threshold multiplier. So in this particular example, it happens to be set to 2 because a 1.5 liter bottle counts as 2 bottles of wine. Let's go ahead and copy this UPC code. We'll go back to the register, and we'll go ahead and scan it in. All right, so there we rang up 1 bottle of this Behringer wine, scanned my driver's license. Let's do it again. Second time, of course, it doesn't ask for my license. And you can see on here, this is the discount column. The discount is at 0. Third time, and all of a sudden our 10% discount just kicked in. And that's because although we have a minimum quantity of 6 to get there, these 1.5 liter bottles count as 2. The discounting is done all automatically. You do not have to worry about it at the register. It's very quick and efficient, and it's also foolproof. So if I select a bottle after getting my discount and void it, sorry, no good anymore. The discount's gone. All right, let's go ahead and add a couple more bottles of wine into that. And I'm looking for Behringer wine. So here's a 750 milliliter, in other words, a normal bottle of wine, if you would. It's a Cabernet. All right, so now we have 2 plus 2 plus 1. It's a total of 5 bottles, essentially, counting to our total of 6 to get the discount. And we'll do it again and add a Chardonnay. And notice our discount is back again. And the discount is tied to the price. It's 10% of the price. So you'll see different discounts if you use a percentage discount. If you want to give a fixed dollar discount, then that's rather unusual in this particular application, but it is possible. The discount type here will default to percentage, but you could set it to a dollar amount. But it really doesn't work very well for the wine industry. Okay, now I rang up the first 2 bottles, which we had just set up and seen was set to a 10% discount at 6. And then I rang up 2 other bottles and it got the discount. And let's bring up another bottle of Beringer. Here's a Pinot Grigio, and it also gets the discount. Now let me ring up a different brand. Here's a Sutter Home Sauvignon Blanc. Well, it doesn't get any discount. The reason for that is you have to tell us what items are tied together for this discounting process to work. If I go back to inventory, and I'm going to reset this back because we didn't make any useful changes here, it was already set to this. The way you do that is in your group discount item field, you put in the item number of a record that you want all of the particular types of wine to tie to. So 770126 was the item number we were just looking at. And once you put in a group discount item number, the threshold retail, the quantity price breaks field, the discount type, the threshold quantity and percentage, they're all grayed out. They are now going to automatically pull from this group discount item field. So we're going to take a look at that record. We're going to pull it over and we're going to say everybody's going to be ringing up from this particular record. The one thing you do get to vary is that threshold multiplier. So a 750 milliliter bottle only counts as 1. If I got rid of this group discount item number, then I can go ahead and put in a separate quantity price break schedule for it. So that's our basic value proposition for liquor stores, smoke shops, and many other markets. We support age verification by department with either manual entry of birth date or using a couple of devices, but most especially Honeywell EasyDL scanners to get the birth date. We can create customer records with the Honeywell EasyDL add-on as well. We support multiple units of measure, which is critical in liquor stores and many other businesses. And we support automatic discounting when you reach a certain level, which is another feature that is, again, very, very common in the liquor store market, which happens to be our single best market. Smoke shops are coming up and convenience stores as well. But we have now covered our topics for today. Thank you very much for attending.